I started looking around for what else I might do for additional treatment methods, and I finally began praying to God, saying, God, you've got to show me a better way to help people. You've just got to show me a better way. There has to be a better way. Our methods are helpful, but they're not really sufficient. There's got to be a better way, and I can't stand the pain of this. And he started bringing my attention back to a book that I had read a year before, but had put back up on the shelf, a book by Dr. Roger Callahan called The 5-Minute Phobia Cure. And I had read the book, thought, oh, this is fascinating, very interesting possibility. It really made some sense to me, but I didn't use it for a long time because I was afraid of looking like a fool if it didn't work. It was so different than any traditional method that I'd look like a fool if I used it and it didn't work. And I finally decided to take it off the shelf and just use it in a cookbook fashion and go step by step. And I did a treatment with one of my clients I'd been working with. I knew her and felt safe enough to try it with her. And she had phobias about flying. And so I thought, well, this is a book about curing phobias, so I'll use it. And she went on her trip that she had to go back to on a bereavement trip. And I got this wonderful letter, postcard from her, saying that she'd made the flight just fine. She didn't have any of the white knuckle experience. Her husband kept looking at her, expecting her to be scared and panicked like she always had been whenever they had to fly in the past. And she did it really well with no problems at all. And of course, that was very rewarding. And I tried it with somebody else on another phobia. It worked extremely well as well. But that scared me because I wasn't sure what this power was that I now had to apply. And I literally put the book back on the shelf and said to God, I'm not going to do this unless you show me that it's from you and that you want me to use it, because I don't want to do anything that would dishonor you. And so I left the book on the shelf for a year. Then I started praying more for him to show me a better way to help, and he brought my attention back to this book. I pulled the book back off the shelf and read it again and decided I would go ahead and use it. And I discovered that I could really do some pretty neat things to help people in ways that I wasn't able to before, and got some amazing results, and my clients were amazed at the shifts that would happen in them and how much better they were doing. I took the training from Dr. Callahan then, talked to him about it, and he had just started doing training, so I was the first psychologist that he trained in his techniques. And then I went off and used it and was really quite surprised at what I could do with the little bit of training that I had gotten from him. But I was getting wonderful results, and but always wondering about, for about 8 years I was working alone, and always wondering about whether or not the tapping really was what was causing the change. I never really was sure that that was what it was. And then in 1998, I made contact with Gary Craig and discovered that he had also considerably shortened what Dr. Callahan had been doing, and he was using a tapping procedure also. Because I started dropping out different aspects of the tapping sequence that Dr. Callahan had taught, and it worked just fine.
One of my, I asked you was, what do you do with the 9-gamut?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do with the 9-gamut?
I don't use it, haven't used it for years.
You haven't used it? Okay.
No.
Interesting, okay. And since you told me that, I said to myself, this was months ago, I said, if he's not using it, why should I? You know?
And he invited me to present at a workshop that he was offering for professionals to come and learn about all different kinds of techniques.
Well, you then sent me a letter. You just sent me a letter talking about your philosophies, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I even got to the point where I was actually having people imagine doing the tapping.
What advantage is there to having them imagine the tapping?
Well, it's probably, you can do it in less than half the time you can do by actually doing the verbalization. And the physical tapping is just far faster.
Oh.
See, we can't.
So you just go brrr, like that in your imagination?
Yeah, the tapping is, that takes mechanical time.
Well, that's not what I did here. I went, discomfort, boom, boom,
Yeah,
like that, okay?
I know, yeah. No,
But you just go brrr, like that, right?
Yeah. And on myself, I do it in, 6, 7, 8 seconds.
And just thinking the statements that we were using at that time, And that worked just as well as actually doing the physical tapping, which further reinforced the idea that maybe the tapping and the meridians weren't really what the causal source of the problems were.
In fact, the client does not have to know what the problem is at all, nor does he have to have any sophisticated language to identify the problem. All he has to do to treat a problem effectively is to consciously notice that he is in some way not in a state of mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual ease.
And I was still doing the tapping, but talking about the subconscious mind.
Their conscious logical mind, their subconscious psychological mind knows exactly all about it and the entire history of it, and it's a very faithful servant that will respond to whatever they recognize as, quote, the problem.
Do you know what it is that your clients do?
No.
And suddenly a light bulb went on in my mind about that it must be the subconscious mind. And that's when a very big leap came about with taking a huge step in changing the direction of what I was doing. After that, I finally decided to not do the tapping. I really didn't need to do the tapping anymore. And so, but yet, about a year later, when I did workshops in Australia, I started switching to teaching half of the seminar the tapping method, then the second half the method without the tapping, just using a cue word. I'd like for all of you to start using the instant procedure. Come up with a word or a very short phrase. Okay, you can do the tapping if you wish, but right now please use the treatment, the treatment cue word that you decide you use. Think your cue word for that problem of your self-image being damaged in this, with all this negativity. All right, I'll start with you, Beryl. You pronounce it Beryl?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like myself.
I like myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm a wonderful person.
I'm a wonderful person.
Mm-hmm. I deserve the very best of everything in life.
I deserve the very best of everything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Do people have to have done taps for the instant treatment to work?
No, I don't even introduce the taps to people anymore. The training I did in about 40 people in Las Vegas in April, I didn't even do the tapping. And I don't do it with my clients anymore. Yes, question here.
So following up on that, how is the key word linked to some healing processing or
Well, we've instructed our subconscious minds to do the treatment as if we were doing all the tapping and making all the statements about I'm eliminating all the sadness and all the roots and deepest cause of all this problem with exactly the same effectiveness. And it just does it for us.
But if you haven't done the tapping and so forth...
Wouldn't have to do the tapping. You just tell it that that's what it's going to do. It's going to talk about emotional roots and belief systems and say how they're connected to the problems and the source of the problem, and that's what you're going to eliminate whenever you think your cue word, and it'll go ahead and do it. You don't need to talk to it about the tapping, which makes me wonder if the tapping's even relevant.
I think we're having a little bit of a conflict here, Larry.
Okay.
You demonstrate the tapping at least once in front of that person, don't you?
Yes, I did.
That's the conflict.
Oh, I don't demonstrate it to clients anymore, new clients. I don't even demonstrate the tapping to them.
Do you talk about
I just
the
mentioned
points?
that they used to tap on some points, to eliminate the sadness, fear, anger, and trauma, but we don't do that anymore. That's all I tell them about it, and it isn't even necessary to say that. And that was a little confusing to people, I found, afterward. But then I just dropped it altogether.
Larry's gone off the deep end. So I opened up my email, and here's an exciting email from Larry. The email said, Don, I found a way to not even have to tap anymore. You just have to say a cue word. And at that time, I knew Larry had gone the path of many people I had studied before. When they get so excited, they veer into areas, and we never hear from them again. But I couldn't believe it. I couldn't literally wrap my mind about it. And it took a couple months until I bumped into someone who Larry had worked with on the phone with the cue word. And I was mouthing off about how ridiculous it was. And he says, well, let's try it. And I said, yeah, all right, let's try it. And we did. And within 3 minutes, I'm going, well, of course you can do it with just a cue word. It makes total logical sense.
The email discussion lists for BSFF, we had conversations about that, and what to call it now, and so we called it instant BSFF instead of the tapping BSFF, but now it's just BSFF, or Be Set Free Fast.